How's it going?
It goes. How are you, Maxie?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be with you. It seems like we've done this twice today already.
Oh, well, isn't time a funny thing?
So tell me, how have you been spending your quarantine? How have things been with you?
Well, I'm lucky that I've been able to sort of work solo in my office at the library to ensure that kids across the daycare centers that we serve still have books and regular book deposits. So, um, quarantine's been a lot. It's been a lot of fear and anxiety. It's been a lot of work and changing work and running a campaign for the first time, much less during a pandemic. So quarantine's been an experience for sure, and not always a good one.
I'm so happy that you're running for office. I always say we need more queer people in office. We need more queer representation. And so I've seen you out and about in the city of St. Louis for so long under, Bill or under Celeste Covington. Can you kind of tell me about like drag and, queer representation and why it's important that we elect queer individuals?
Well, uh, a candidate recently said, and I believe it was Tashara Jones said that, we need people who are close to the problem because they're close to the solution. And frankly, there are still a lot of problems that are concerning for the LGBT community and that concern the LGBT community. So, ultimately, it's my identity as an openly gay man and my career with St. Louis Public Library and the St. Louis Art Museum and St. Louis County Library that taught me that we truly do have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And St. Louis needs a whole lot of change. And I hope to help bring it with the help of my neighbors.
That's true. A lot of times when we think about equity and diversity, sometimes we get blindsided by identity politics and we elect people into positions that they're not fitted for just so that we can have someone that fits a particular quota. Can you kind of tell me how you aren't just a gay person running for office, but you are the right person running for office?
Well, that's a very good point. And I really appreciate you asking that. Because one, people should never be reduced to quotas, right? However, I know I'm speaking for myself and I'm probably speaking for you, and that at times it can definitely feel tokenized, can't it? As if we're the token XYZ. And it has been a fine line between being authentic and genuine about who I am and transparent about who I am and not tokenizing myself or allowing others to. So I'm a good fit for the office because I care, because I lead with my heart and I believe in fierce compassion, radical empathy, and I get my hands in the dirt. And I have quite the history of volunteering and professional careers that show that if it needs to be done, I'm the one to roll up my sleeves. And there's a lot that needs to be done. So
there's so much that needs to be done.
mm-hmm.
So can you tell me about what position you're running for? I know you're running as an alderman. What ward are you in? What neighborhoods is that? And what policy would you like to get done in your first year?
So I am running for the Board of Aldermen, specifically for the 12th Ward, which is deep South City. So Ward 12 actually extends past the River de Pere. We're talking Princeton Heights, Boulevard Heights, and Carondelet, 63109, 111, 116. And, there's a lot of things that I'd like to accomplish in my first year and during my tenure as alderman. But specifically, I really want to focus on public education, ensuring that we fund it, ensuring that we raise that bar, and make it equitable for all of our citizens. There will always be citizens that rely on public education. We have to ensure they have access to a quality education. Reconstructing public safety. We have a system that's not working for anyone, and yet both sides are at complete opposite ends and unwilling to work on a solution or figure something else better. We have to figure something else better. St. Louis is known for being a violent city, and I don't think we have to be. I do think we have to address it, you know? And then economic development. Maxie, we've got buildings collapsing all over the city. And that's not being grandiose. Like, buildings are literally collapsing. We can't have that. That's a public safety concern. Um, that's bad for development, and all three of these things, all three of these platforms all interconnect. And people are ready to take on these big challenges. We've just been waiting for those in our city and our neighborhoods to step up to the plate. So I'm stepping up to the plate.
We love that. We're ready for you to bat.
Yeah.
We're ready for you to bat.
Yeah.
Now, the ward that you represent is a wider ward, I would say, for some of the neighborhoods that are in there. How will you be able to use this position to help move the conversation forward to constituents in your ward to fight for racial equity?
Well, so frequently in this campaign, I've come across this notion that people need to stay in their lane, right? But then they failed to define the lane as staying safe within their ward. And for the Board of Aldermen, that you just can't, because yes, the Board of Aldermen is absolutely making sure that potholes are addressed and that garbage is taken, on schedule. And it is absolutely the neighborhood level concerns. But they also oversee the legislation that affects the entire city. So I don't believe that we can stay safe in our wards. And I'm really quite eager to work with, my fellow Northern aldermen in the North City, there we are, to really just reach across ward boundaries. I do not believe that community knows ward boundaries. And I don't think as legislators we can either. And I think a lot of it has to be cultural. I think we have a cultural conversation going on at both the local and national level, and we need people to facilitate that. And we need orators who are able to facilitate that in a way that allows for discourse and allows for it to be difficult. These are really difficult topics. And I think it's okay to allow them to be difficult. It's not okay not to allow them whatsoever.
One thing that I've known about you is how genuine you are and how transparent you are. A lot of people find that electoral politics hardens a lot of people. You get constantly berated with, my alleyway doesn't look good, or this doesn't look good, and it's your fault because you're my representative. And so how are you going to stay true to yourself? How are you going to deal with all the added pressure of being in charge of a ward to an extent?
Well, I think I would be approaching public office incorrectly if I weren't willing to grow from it, or if I was unable to grow from it, if I remained sort of stoic against change and growth. That isn't to say that I expect or hope to sort of be hardened by it, but it should be a transformative experience, right? Because that means I'm accurately reflecting the changes in conversations and discourse and culture. It means that I'm remaining malleable. But you're right, it does take some hardening. And Maxie, you know me, I'm someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, right? I feel deeply. And that's why I'm running with fierce compassion, radical empathy. Because in those really hard moments where I'm being criticized, and fairly so, we should absolutely hold our elected representatives and candidates accountable. When it does come up, yeah, I'm only human. It can be tough. It can be stressful. It can hurt. But I remain people focused. And I think that really gives me a leg up on my opponent and on the other candidates in the city, is that I'm truly here for the people. You don't work at a public library if you don't find it fulfilling. It's hard work, You're coming up against people who don't have much of anything, and they don't have much of anything because the system is rigged against them. And you're coming up against that day in and day out. I don't work for St. Louis Public Library because it's easy. I work for St. Louis Public Library because it's hard. And I'm running to represent people not because it's easy, but because it matters and because they matter to me. Just like you being here matters to me. So, but I
That
do
matter.
appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that I'm genuine and whatnot. That was very sweet. Thank you.
So, when we're looking at public safety, there's a lot of different routes to liberation. In the city of St. Louis, a large portion of our funding goes to the police. Many studies have said that this isn't actually what combats crime at the cause. What do you do with these claims, and what is your response?
So, first and foremost, I appreciate you noting that there are various avenues that we can explore and various routes we can take, because that's one of my core approaches to policy, in that we identify the goal, right? We identify where we're going, and we can try an avenue to reach that. And if that avenue doesn't work, we can't stop. That doesn't mean that it's not viable to reach our goal. It just means that that avenue didn't work. And that's okay, because now we know that it won't. So we find a new avenue. So I really appreciate you pointing that out, because so often people can think that people have the notion that it's this way or no way. And that's just not how humans work. That's not how groups of humans work. And frankly, that's a reductive approach to policy, to think that it's just the one avenue. So you are correct. We spend a huge amount of our budget on public safety. And again, the system's not working for anyone. So I believe that, one, we cannot have reactionary measures such as Board Bill 200. That is an after the fact expensive measure to correct and ameliorate crime, to eliminate crime. I think we have to focus on the root causes of it, because so many of our neighbors, and frankly, so many of our citizens in the United States, are just trying to survive from day to day. I understand that. I know food insecurity. I know homelessness. Although my homelessness was very privileged. I was able to keep a roof over my head. I know how stressful it was to have that level of homelessness, right? Uh, I I understand educational barriers that we can't control. And I understand and I know, Maxie, that none of these things have to exist or persist except that we let them. So ultimately, I think that if we empower the public by giving them the resources they need to remake their communities, then we can have radical change to course correct our city, our public safety, our economic development, and bring about a new heyday for St. Louis. We're ready for it. We're poised for it, Maxie. We just have to do it.
You said one thing that really stuck out to me. You said empowering the people to help make that change. What does that look like to you?
I think we really need to rejuvenate and revitalize our sense of community, both at the ward level, so both in our immediate sort of area, and at the city level, because again, community knows no ward boundaries. So I think that's part of the culture. My campaign is partially policy, what am I about? What are my platforms? What I want to accomplish? And it's partially cultural. What conversations do we have? What do we need to reframe? And what do we need to correct in our cultural approach to things, both as individuals and as a collective group? So I think we have to start engaging in these tough, sort of murky conversations of, what really is community? Because I can speak at length to my community, to our community, the LGBT community. And, it's about bridging those gaps. We just need someone who can bridge them. And we need people that are willing to, to be bridged. Yeah. I was thinking about that one. Your viewers are gonna be able to see my little gear turning, but
Now, you're very well worded, and you really, you are very sure of yourself, and you really understand concepts, and you can articulate them quite well. Not very many people in the city of St. Louis can do this. We have a scholastic infrastructure that is completely deteriorating. and access to higher education is inaccessible to very, very, very many people. So, what can the city of St. Louis do to help people articulate themselves better, or help people understand concepts in theory to be well worded?
That's also very sweet. I do want to point out that I studied languages and linguistics, right? So I sound very well spoken because I actually just study language, which is not to sort of dismiss my any speaking skill that I have, or my sort of comfortability with my speaking, but and you also know that I had to struggle to go back to college. I had to pay off a debt that my father owed to my high school. It took me 8 years to pay it off in order to return to university. So I appreciate that. Again, with public education, it's not just properly funding it that matters, because I think we also have to really show and demonstrate to our children of all ages, not just early childhood, but 0 to 18 or 0 to when they graduate, that they do matter. And I think one of the most overlooked facets of these recent school closures is the emotional impact it has on our children. There will be plenty of students in St. Louis public schools that are largely unaffected or otherwise indifferent. That's okay. If that's where they're at, that's where they're at. But there'll be students that are really struggling with this or are very adversely affected. And I think it can absolutely leave a student with the sense, one of our children with the sense that, well, the city doesn't care about me and they don't matter. And, the policy stuff is easy because it's easy in the sense that, we can create policy or we can create platforms and we can put it on paper and it looks good and it sounds good. But what's difficult for me is knowing that every day that we're not correcting this, we're making it harder for our students and we're showing them that they don't matter to us. And that's why I work in early childhood, because they do matter to me. And I I think that we can have such a robust system and it would show improvement. But if we fail to truly demonstrate that we do actually care about our students, then it doesn't matter how well spoken I am. It doesn't matter how sound my policies are or anything like that. It doesn't matter how robust our school system is, because we have to plant the seed of self-worth in people in order for it to grow. And I don't think we're accomplishing that quite yet. I think we're trying. I think the Board of Education is trying. I think the Board of Aldermen is also trying. But we've got to do better, especially for our kids.
A lot of bills are being introduced into the Board of Aldermen. Many, many bills all the time.
Yes.
How can one differentiate a good bill from a bad bill?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a very introspective question, isn't it? So when I approach a piece of legislation or a bill or whatnot, of course, I'm really looking at the words. Again, I study words. So, but you have to look at the initial impact, like who is this affecting and why is it affecting them? What does it hope to accomplish? What does it need to accomplish that? And then you have to kind of look sort of between the words, or sort of more at the minutiae. You have to sort of try and forecast, like, okay, so will this disenfranchise anyone? Does this target a certain people? Why does it target a certain people? Why is it disenfranchising those people? Is this the avenue that we need to take? So you have to sort of really take it for what's on the paper in front of you, take it for its tangible value. And then you have to imagine all the ways in which it can be used or exploited, or build us up or tear us down. And you have to look into yourself introspectively, and also consider your constituents and those you represent. But like I said before, I cannot approach a piece of legislation with only Ward 12 in mind if it's going to affect more than Ward 12. So I have to consider, how does this impact North City? How does this impact the Central Corridor? Who's benefiting from it? And how is that benefit going to spread across the entire city? Or is it really just going to be concentrated to this one area? And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's bad. You just really have to take a holistic approach to it and ask yourself, if I vote on this today, am I an I or an A?
I love that. Okay, so when we're looking at policymakers, a lot of people stay in the same office for very, very, very long and have an obsession with holding on to power. This question kind of has two parts. One, how do we know that you don't want office just to accumulate power for yourself? And two, after this, what would you have your sights set on?
So I think that's a good question, and it's a good observation. And I think, my answer would be that they've lost track of the people they serve. They've lost track of the point, right? Because the point of public service is to serve the public. But you are absolutely correct in that at every level of government, from, non-legislative board members to the president of the United States, it can absolutely become about the power. And that presents quite the barrier to challenge. It's hard to take on sort of structured systemic power, but we don't do it because it's easy. We do it because it's hard. So how will I not go crazy with power? I don't view it as a power role. I view it as a community role, which is not to say that I don't recognize it is a role that has power. It does. But this is an extension of a career in public service. I've been paid by taxpayers for years now, my entire career, working for taxpayer-funded institutions. So this just helps to elevate a more progressive agenda, because I have years of seeing how the system doesn't work, and I'd like to help make the system better. And I do like to think that I would have the integrity and the tenacity to hold myself accountable, to be held accountable by my constituents and neighbors all over the city, and to, if necessary, not run for re-election if I'm not the best candidate. Because it's not about getting me elected to office. It's about getting the right person elected to office. And in my race, I'm the right person.
I love that. And I guess to follow up on that, would you ever be interested in running for a statewide position or even a nationwide position when it comes to legislation?
Okay, so I have maybe flirted with the idea, sort of late at night when you can't sleep and you're like, what's my future gonna be? Of one day running for the Senate, the US Senate, because again, it's a position where I can help enact progressive change. And what is progressive change, right? We always say progressive. Oh, he's a progressive Democrat, or the Young Dems today, the St. Louis Young Democrats, I should say, endorse candidates that have a progressive platform, and will bring progress to their areas. What is progress? It's government for the people, as it should be. We're one of the only modern governments, especially at our scale, at the federal level, that's not working for the people, that's remaining apprehensive and relying on the wholly incorrect adage of that's how we've always done it, so let's continue to do that. So I have flirted with the idea of maybe one day being like Senator Stevens, especially when we have someone like Josh Hawley in office. It's nice to think that I'd be a pretty good replacement. But it's about where I can bring about the most change and the best change. And I think it has to start at home. So I'm starting at home.
I think that our country is really, really, really more divided and is really, really polarized with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And Missouri, you can see that with Cori Bush and Josh Hawley. And a lot of times we are able to criticize those on the other side of the aisle and absolving any guilt or any blame to anyone within our political party, perpetuating this polarization as this weird family feud funded by the same donors at times. How can we combat this dichotomy and fight for unity? And what would that look like?
You know, I frequently say we need to have conversations, right? Like we need to talk, we need to be more engaged with others, we need to be open to other opinions. This is a time where I will say, we don't need any more conversation. We need action. There's a time for conversation, which is absolutely a crucial role and a crucial part of this. Conversation and communication, not just talking, but hearing and listening as well, and being heard as well, is absolutely crucial. It's a crucial facet of unity for sure. But we also need accountability, and we need to be held responsible when we mess up. We need to be allowed to make mistakes, and we can always we can always explain our mistakes, right? But being able to explain a mistake does not necessarily excuse it. So I do think that we need to hold people to their actions. We need to hold them responsible for it. And it perhaps sounds a bit contradictory, but I think if we all hold ourselves and others to this standard of being responsible while engaging in these conversations, that then unity can occur, you know. But, you know, I think the easy sort of low-hanging fruit example is January 6th, the storming of the Capitol. We do need unity in this country. We do need to reach across some very, very large canyons and really come back to what does it mean to be American and what does America look like? But we can't excuse those actions. And I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, as all of the candidates in St. Louis City now are. You know, there has to be repercussions. There has to be grace, and there has to be understanding, and there has to be fierce compassion, radical empathy. But that's not a carte blanche to do whatever you want. So
how can people get in touch with you? How can people get involved with your campaign? Yeah.
Well, you know, they are so welcome to, one, hold me accountable. And they can hold me accountable and contact me through my Facebook page, Bill Stevens for 12th Ward Alderman, through my website, Bill Z as in zebra, Stevens.com, BillZStevens.com. They can connect with me on Twitter, which is at BStingSTL. And I mean, they can knock on my door. They can send me a letter. They can call my campaign line. Everything comes to me personally. Send me an email, stevensforalderman@gmail.com. Any mode of contact that works. Making sure that there's also modes of contact that aren't tied to a computer or to internet availability is also crucial. And I'm happy to engage. And you don't have to be a voter in my ward. Even if you can't vote for me, and even if you won't vote for me in a million years, you're still my neighbor. And you being here still matters a great deal to me. So please reach out.
I love that. So any final things that you want to say to the people at home watching?
Well, you know, to the people at home and to you, Maxie, I want to say we can do this. This can be accomplished. It hasn't yet been accomplished because we're relying on that this is how we've always done it mentality. But look at the candidates for this round of elections. Look at all the progressive candidates that have so much momentum, because all this time we were waiting for progressive candidates to stand up. We're going to turn this city around, and it is going to be turned around for the better. It's going to be better for all of us, not just a select few. And we just have to do it. and we are doing it.